The other big story when it comes to conservative media this week is the divorce of Steven Crowder. I take a little bit of personal enjoyment in this because Steven Crowder is one of the biggest pieces of shit on the internet. He is a super giant, huge piece of garbage, Steven Crowder. He is okay, so here's the thing, right? Tucker Carlson was sort of like speaking to the boomers, right? And would use coded language when it comes to things like immigration and bigotry. And he would try to hide his bigotry, but in this veneer of respectability. I'm not being bigoted. I'm just looking out for blah, 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 or I'm trying to defend Western civilization, whatever, blah, 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 right? Steven Crowder is just straight up racist. Steven Crowder is a sort of a wannabe shock jock style. Sort of, that's what he does. He really makes incredibly bad racist jokes. Like, he would occasionally do stand up, and it was like, if you've ever seen it, they have video of him on YouTube doing stand up routines. It's the most unfunny shit ever. Conservatives are not funny. Conservatives are not funny. They don't understand, like politics in general is not funny, like, at all. Politics is boring. Okay, it's not funny. It's either you either get mad at it or you're indifferent when it comes to politics. So trying to make fun of, like, I don't know. So he would occasionally have these really, really pathetic stand-up routines that he would go through and stuff like that, and try to do it into a show. And so he'd make lots of, jokes making fun of black people and lots of jokes making fun of gay people and stuff like that. Like, it's like, dude, this ain't 1987 anymore. Shit's not funny, right? Like, no one's laughing at your dumbass fucking jokes. But he would try to integrate stuff like that into his show, and would just be a little more mask off with the racism and all that stuff, right? And misogyny and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's some personal satisfaction to me to show that, yeah, maybe his life is not as rich and cozy as he likes to think, because fuck him. If anybody deserves to have their marriage fucking, like, ruined, it's this asshole. Good. I'm glad he's getting fucking divorced. So, what exactly is the story? Well, here's the thing, okay? He went on his own show and announced it. And I want to play that clip for you guys. So let's go ahead and open this up. This is Steven Crowder talking about this is his announcement of him getting divorced, which is like, I don't know why he felt like he needed to announce that he was getting divorced on his show. He could have just brought it up and said, oh yeah, I'm getting divorced, moving on. But no, he made a big segment out of it. So we should listen to what the man has to say, right?
I have been living with a proverbial boot on my neck for going on years now. Since 2021, I've been living through what has increasingly been a horrendous divorce. Now, let me say on the outset, to be clear, there's no infidelity, any kind of physical abuse at all on either side. And no, this was not my choice.
So I like how you get these sort of MRM type things. You notice how you brought up the physical abuse thing and then immediately said on either side. It's because there's this misconception, there's this myth that MRM types have that women actually abuse men more than men abuse women, which is just complete. I wish it's as ridiculous as it sounds, right? And I wish I was making that up, but I'm not. And that's why he said that. That right there was a virtue signal to his audience right there. It's like, oh, maybe she's abusing him. That's the kind of audience that this guy caters to. The idea that women are the ones out there who physically abuse men, and that's the real untold story of domestic abuse. It's a fucking joke. I just needed to point that out there. Moving on.
My then wife decided that she didn't want to be married anymore. And in the state of Texas, that is completely permitted. It's been the most heartbreaking experience.
I don't know why he had to bring that up either. In the state of Texas, it's completely permitted. It is permitted in every state, right? I guess it didn't used to be. I guess you used to have grounds for divorce back in the day or whatever. You couldn't just divorce somebody for whatever reason. You had to come up with a reason for it. And nowadays, you could just be like, yeah, you don't have to supply a reason. You can just divorce somebody, irreconcilable differences or whatever. There doesn't have to be grounds for it. I guess that's what he's talking about. But I wonder why he had to bring that up. Oh, in the state of Texas, that's completely permitted. Like, why would you even bring that up? I mean, is he just against the idea of people even divorcing in the first place? Like, is he just does he think that women should not be able to decide specifically that they can end a relationship? Right? Because you got to remember, folks, party of freedom, right? They believe, oh, you have the freedom to, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and all that stuff. And you should be able to do whatever you want and say whatever you want and live with whoever you want, etc., etc., etc. But then, when that stuff gets applied to their real lives, all of a sudden, all these restrictions start coming in. It's like, oh, he actually doesn't like the idea that you can actually be free to live the way you want to live, right? It kind of sounds like he likes the idea of forcing women specifically to stay in a relationship. I mean, where did that freedom go? Where's the whole no, don't tread on me. I love freedom and no one's going to tell me otherwise kind of thing. Like, I like how that shit just flies right out the window when it suddenly applies to his personal life. When it applies to his relationship, it's like, no, the state says she's allowed to divorce me. Like, fucking obviously. Like, I don't know. A little hypocritical. Moving on.
My life, what I consider to be my deepest personal failure, and just so you know, my opinions on parenting and families have not changed. I've always believed that children need a mom and a dad, that divorce is horrible, and I still believe that children need a mom and a dad and that divorce is horrible.
Okay.
But in today's legal system, my beliefs don't matter. In Texas, divorce is permitted when one party wants it, period.
Yeah. So I guess he just sort of doubled down on that, didn't he? I mean, he said that his beliefs don't matter, and Texas says that you can get divorced, so is his belief that you shouldn't be allowed to be divorced? Would Steven Crowder, if he was suddenly president tomorrow, would he outlaw divorce? Is that what he's trying to say? So he doesn't want to get a divorce, I guess. Is that what he's trying to say? He doesn't want to get divorced, but yeah, I mean, there you go, folks. It just kind of shows right there, like, the authoritarian bent when it comes to Christian conservatives. I mean, he's essentially just straight out said it right there. If he was in charge, he would outlaw divorce. So I guess once you're married, then you're just married forever till death do you part. It may be of interest to you guys to know that he put out a couple of opinion pieces talking about how you should be celibate until you get married. Right. In fact, I've got one right here. In fact, maybe we'll look at them a little bit after we're done listening to this moron talk for a bit. But yeah, Steven Crowder is I didn't really know this. He's highly, highly, highly conservative. Like, he's religiously conservative, right? I just sort of thought that he was just like a wannabe kind of edgelord kind of dude, writing stupid jokes and stuff. But no, he's like super conservative Christian, like Handmaid's Tale kind of shit almost. Right? Like, women should just stay in the home and not go outside. And I don't know. I mean, kind of what it seems like to me. But let's move on here. I didn't know that. I thought that this dude was sort of going for that, like, Howard Stern, like a conservative Howard Stern sort of angle. But no, he's super don't have sex before marriage. Like, are you fucking serious? Like, I mean, that's the kind of shit that he's going for. But anyway, let's continue watching here.
So for well over a year, in the best interest as well as physical safety of my children, we've decided to keep this issue private and to resolve it privately with the appropriate attorneys.
I don't know why your announcement of your divorce would put your children in danger. I mean, you said physical protection of my children, right? Like, who's going to actually harm your children over you getting divorced? That doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? Now, I mean, I guess you could say, okay, I could look at it from one angle, like giving him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he means, like, since he's a celebrity, that crazy people may try to do something. Try to track him down and hurt his family or something. Maybe that's what he's talking about, right? But generally, that doesn't really seem like that would be much of an excuse. Like, most of the time when you have a divorce, like, the physical safety of your children doesn't really come into play. Like, no one's gonna harm your kids because you're getting divorced. This seems like a very thin rationale to me. Like, maybe that's what he means. I always try to kind of give the benefit of the doubt for it, but kind of sounds like he's coming up with a bullshit excuse is what it sounds like to me. It's like, it kind of sounds like he's trying to like think of any rationale whatsoever as to why he, like, kept it secret and didn't want to tell anybody and blah 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 blah. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong here.
What have you, legal jargon. Now, in all this, one thing I want to be really clear about is certain. True north here is that my children are blameless, completely without fault,
Right.
and so we decided to resolve these issues privately, as it's in their best interests, both emotionally and physically, to do so. Now, the other issue is...
Has anybody ever gotten divorced because of their children? No, right? That's not usually a thing that happens, right? Like, usually when people people will stay in a marriage for the sake of the children, right? Not the other way around. It's usually not like, hey, we were great until we had kids and now I don't like you anymore and it's little Johnny's fault. I mean, has that ever happened? Like, I don't know. Maybe his kids are complete dicks. I mean, apparently his children are they're like babies. So, unless he gave birth to some kind of, like, little omen child, deranged Satan baby that's just driving them all crazy. Maybe that's it. Maybe Steven Crowder gave birth to the spawn of Satan. Right? And it's driving him crazy. It's keeping him up all night, and maybe he has to, like, go out and feed it live possums. Right? Maybe he's doing human sacrifices to his child or whatever every single night, and gave birth to, like, the spawn of Cthulhu or something. It's like, oh, it's totally not the baby's fault. It's just driving me insane. Just looking upon his visage makes me lose my mind or whatever. Makes me drop sanity points. I don't know. I guess if anybody was going to give birth to the Antichrist, Steven Crowder would be, I'd say, a top candidate for that. Let's continue.
And this is something that I've kept private for likely far too long. Many other people knew about this behind the scenes. Some, not all, but some of them in positions of power, influence, leverage, knew of this.
Leverage.
They also knew that the safety of my children included keeping it private. So if you're familiar with...
But that doesn't... What he's saying doesn't make sense. The safety of my children included keeping private. I mean, no. It sounds more like the safety of his career meant keeping it private. That's kind of what it sounds like to me. Why would the safety of your children have anything to do with it? I think he's lying. I think what it really is that he didn't want this to get out because it had the potential to ruin his career, like it's doing right now. And he's using his kids as a shield. Kind of the same way that Ted Cruz blamed his children when he skipped town. When you remember a few years ago when Texas was freezing, there was this huge ice storm and like millions of people were out of power, freezing to death in Texas. And Ted Cruz like went to Cancun for the weekend. Remember that? Kind of like that. When Ted Cruz got busted and he went, "Oh well, this is my children want to go to Cancun. I was just dropping them off." It's like he just lied and blamed his family for it. Kind of like that. That's what this reminds me of. It's like Crowder realizes, "Oh, I fucked up." Right? And if this video or whatever of me abusing my wife gets out, it's going to ruin my career, so I'm just going to keep it secret. And now he's like butthurt because he knew it was going to come out here, right? And he's like going, I was doing it for the safety of my kids. And anybody out there, they were blackmailing me. They knew I had it, and they're just that's what it looks like to me. I mean, I don't know. I'm sorry if I don't trust Steven Crowder to actually tell the truth about anything. Right. Let's continue on a little more here.
The idea of extortion, then you know the feeling well. Now, some of these...
Extort? Who the fuck would extort him over this? I mean, the thing is, it's right. It's a divorce. It's going to get released anyway. Right? Like, how the fuck do you blackmail somebody over a divorce? Right. It's not like there was, I guess he's saying there was no infidelity or whatever. I mean, is he lying about that? Was there actual infidelity? Did he cheat on his wife? Like, was somebody blackmailing him over that? The fact that he was cheating on his wife? Is that what happened? I could believe that, but just the idea that he was getting divorced in the first place, like, who cares? Who gives a shit? I mean, especially when it comes to conservatives. Conservatives, the family values party, they're always talking about how they love family values and all this other shit, but every single one of them has been divorced 17 times. And not even talking about politicians. I'm not even talking about people like Newt Gingrich, who's been married 4 times, or Trump, who's been married 3 times, or cheated on his wife with a porn star, or Gingrich, who fucking like divorced his wife when she had cancer, shit like that. I'm not even talking about that stuff. Like, when it comes to pundits, people like, I mean, how many times did Rush Limbaugh get married? What, fucking 12? Right? Like, his constituents, his fans, I guess, you gotta remember he's not a politician, right? His fans would literally not give a shit at all in the slightest that he got divorced. It's not like he's gonna be like, oh, some of their fans are going to be like, oh, Steven Crowder got divorced. I can no longer listen to him. That's the dumbest fucking shit ever. Literally no one on earth would give a fuck if this guy gets divorced. So why is he trying to hide it? Why I really think the reason he was hiding it is because he knew that there was videos of him fucking, of like abuse and shit. Right. Which we'll come to in a minute here. There was videos of that kind of thing out there. And he knew that if people saw that shit, it was going to fuck him up. Right. Let's continue. Still got about a couple minutes.
Were so thinly veiled that I'm frankly surprised you didn't all guess immediately.
Steven has a lot going on, I guess.
Oh, yeah. This is where he's basically blaming Candace Owens for trying to like blackmail him or whatever. So we're just gonna skip that. Okay, I don't want to listen to Candace Owens. Long story short, yeah, it appears like he decided to start beef with Candace Owens over his divorce. I guess, is this like some attempt to monetize it or something? Like, if you really wanted to keep it quiet, why would you do that? Let's continue a little more. All right, let's watch the rest of this and then I'll comment, because we'll never get through it if I don't shut up. So,
well, my children have a right to privacy. Now, some other issues have been, or I should say,
remember, his children are like a year old. Like, one of them is like 8 months old and one is like 12 months old or something like that. something like that. Okay, they're very young. His, like 8 months and like 16 months or something. So it's not like people are going to be coming up into the street badgering his children, asking them questions and that kind of thing, right? So that's why this sounds like a very thin excuse to me. Oh, my children have a right to privacy. Like where? In fucking kindergarten? Like they're not even they're not even like old enough to go to preschool yet or whatever. Like where? In the sandbox? Is that where they're gonna are they getting badgered by paparazzi and shit when they're in their fucking playpens? Like it doesn't square with reality, It's made up bullshit. Like it's really his career that he's concerned with. Moving on.
Inferences have been more pernicious behind the scenes with demands and threats to use this information that they believe would be so publicly embarrassing to me and my wife at a difficult time that it could be used, knowingly putting my children in harm's way. So to those self-styled Christians, conservatives, and allies, well, not in my book.
Dude, he's lying to you. He just lied, therefore putting my children in harm's way. I like how Christians can just, why is it that Christians can just lie with impunity like this? Why is it that Christians, what is it that makes Christians feel like they're allowed to just bullshit people? I mean, if you really believed in God, wouldn't you? And you really believed that, you should not bear false witness, like, wouldn't you try to, like, obey that? He's lying right here, like, right at us. And that's what makes me not feel bad about his current situation, right? He can't even be truthful about what's happening to him. like he's not. I don't know. Let's continue.
Now, if you find yourself, I don't want to get into details, so this is going to likely be the only time I have to address this or want to address this. If you're asking yourself, hey, did X person or did Y person know? The answer is likely yes, which will be made alarmingly clear as this process of discovery continues. And it also, by the way, makes me that much more appreciative of those who did know about this and in understanding the best interests of my family, my children, kept their word and used discretion. I can't thank you enough. Okay. Sincerely, I appreciate
Continue
it. Won't
on.
forget
Yes.
it.
Get to the point, please.
It's pretty simple. I loved a woman so much that I married her. A woman who, despite all of this, I still love as the mother of my children.
All right.
And she wanted something else for her life. That's not my choice. She simply wanted out, and the law says that that's how it works. Now, of course, look, I get it. There are multiple sides to every story, but one thing that is undeniable.
And the law says that's how it works. Here's the other thing. If you really love someone, then you shouldn't force them to be in a relationship with you. Maybe you'd try to get some marriage counseling, something like that. But ultimately, a marriage is just a relationship. And, you should do everything you can to try to make it work. But if it doesn't work, and if the other person really truly doesn't want to be with you, then it's unhealthy to stay. It's unhealthy to stay in a relationship that is not mutually beneficial to both people. Where both people are getting love from it. Both people are getting their needs met, right? Their physical needs, their emotional needs, right? Their financial needs. These are all things that have to be considered. And yeah, I say that without any compunction at all. If you're not getting your needs met, then you will get them from somewhere else. Because they're called needs, and you need them to be fulfilled. So you should do the best you can when you marry somebody. You have to remember all that. And you have to remember that it's a give and take. You can't just expect everything from one person in a marriage, right? The other side has to give some too, and that includes you. So if you're not doing your side of that, if you're not providing, right? Not just monetarily, not just physically, emotionally as well, right? It's important for people to feel loved and needed and also fulfilled in other ways too in a relationship, right? If you're getting some of those needs but not others, then that's unbalanced. Your partner has a life also. They should be allowed to do the things they want to do, fulfill themselves. Sounds kind of like Steven Crowder is the one who's getting all of his needs met here, and his wife isn't. Your partner has thoughts and desires and wishes and things that they want to accomplish in their life too, and you should, part of your duty of being married is to help them fulfill those things. They have dreams also, right? Help them achieve their dreams as well. If you ain't doing that, it's not just all about like, oh, he's rich, he's got all the money, and how could she leave him? No, it's not all about that. There's other things out there besides money, right? Almost finished here. Let's continue.
In this case, is that it's no one's fault but my own, in that I picked wrong, and that's certainly not the fault of my children.
Okay. That's his takeaway from this. Let's just rewind that a little bit. This is Steven Crowder's takeaway from his divorce.
This case is that it's no one's fault but my own, in that I picked wrong, and that's certainly not the fault of my children.
He picked wrong. That's his takeaway from this. This is what Steven Crowder's learning, right, from his experience with a failed marriage. It's got nothing in, and this kind of shows what kind of person this guy is. Okay, what kind of person, deranged, childish narcissism is how I would describe Steven Crowder after watching this, right? That's what he is. He's a child. He's an overgrown man-child. Because what did he learn from his failed marriage? Right? That he wasn't able to fulfill the needs of his partner that has loved him enough to bear his children. What did he learn? He picked wrong. Now, there are situations out there. I'm not gonna like claim that I know everything or I know everything about Steven Crowder's life or I know everything about marriages and all that. I don't. I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy with opinions. But what I do know is that you should learn from your experiences. What went wrong? There are chances. I will give this caveat. There are situations, there are relationships where, yes, it is entirely the fault of one person. That is true. That the behavior of one person, whether they're crazy, they're a narcissist, they're just toxic, that happens. That happens all the time. There are just toxic fucking people out there that you just have to get away from. And you may be the best person, the most kind, nice, loving person on earth, and nothing you do satisfies this other person. That's true. There are abusive relationships, that kind of thing. That's kind of what it sounds like is going on here. It kind of sounds like Steven Crowder is the abusive one. Right. So that's definitely true. But the majority of relationships, most of the time, it's a give and take. Most of the time, each person has flaws. They do good things, they do bad things, whatever. And most of the time, you can learn from what went wrong in that relationship. Oh, I was too emotionally distant, for example, right? Oh, I didn't give her what she, I belittled her too much. I didn't treat her equally. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. You can always think of these things and say to yourself, well, next time, she doesn't like me anymore, but whatever. Next relationship I'm in, I'm going to learn my lesson. I'm going to be less of an asshole, etc., 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 right? His takeaway was that it was 100% her fault. That was his takeaway. His takeaway was, I chose the wrong person. I chose the wrong person. I was totally cool, the whole time this is her fault. The only thing I did wrong was choosing somebody, the wrong person. Like I said before, folks, remember, Steven Crowder and his now ex-wife apparently waited for marriage before they got it on. Right? I know this. Let's go ahead and get rid of this shit. I know this because he wrote an op-ed. This is Steven Crowder's op-ed that he wrote before he got married. Waiting till the wedding night, getting married the right way, by Steven Crowder. This is Fox News opinion. Now, we don't really need to read this because it is basically vapid bullshit. It's funny in that it's stupid as hell. Maybe we might read through this one day in a future stream. Because I do want to do a stream on trad wives and shit like that. Right? Blah, blah, blah. But that's what Steven Crowder is, he was one of these traditional Christian lifestyle people. I didn't even know this. Because if you listen to his show, he comes off crass, has like edgy jokes skirting the line of racism, very sexist stuff like that. And you would expect him to be sort of an MRM kind of guy. But no, sounds like he was very much... Here's another one by Steven Crowder. Why not having sex might be good for you. Somehow I doubt Steven Crowder didn't have sex before he was married. Somehow I doubt that he waited until his wedding night to actually lose his virginity. I wouldn't be surprised if his wife did. Right? It seems to me when it comes to that whole sort of I waited to my wedding night kind of shit, most of the time it seems to be the woman that does that. Like when it comes to the conservative, evangelical Christian, culture, it's more important for a woman to be a virgin than a man. I'll never figure that shit out either. It's like there's seriously a double standard when it comes to sex and conservative Christians. Yep. So this is basically a column he wrote all about abstinence. Maybe we might read this. I'm gonna bookmark this because maybe let's bookmark this and put it in politics, right? Maybe we might come back to this one day because it looks hilarious, but I just don't have the time today to talk about this bullshit. So yeah, that's Steven Crowder not learning his lesson. And like I said, folks, it really seems like a dumb thing to go on about, right? You notice how he was like, oh, I'm trying to blame my children, blah, 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 right? All this other shit. It really seems like he was more concerned about his career and not so much about his marriage, right? Not so much about protecting his children. It doesn't make sense to me. Some evidence for this, let's just make this a little tiny here. Some evidence for what I'm talking about came out of this Ring video of Steven Crowder basically emotionally berating his wife here. This came out yesterday. See, this is why it's always a good idea not to jump on stuff immediately. If you ever make videos commenting on stuff in the news, it's always a good idea to maybe wait a little while because more stuff will come out about what happens in the story. The next day after Crowder makes his embarrassing and misleading divorce announcement video, this video comes out of him emotionally abusing his wife. So let's set up the scene for you. Here's his wife, who's super pregnant. See her stomach here? It's all hanging out. Crowder's here in they're actually very nice backyard. I mean, you could tell he's loaded. He's a fucking multimillionaire. Very nice backyard. Smoking a cigar with his pregnant wife there, which is bad. You're not supposed to smoke around someone who's pregnant. Let's listen to what they have to say.
No respect. You said, then we're at an impasse.
Stephen, no, we are at an impasse, okay? I love you, but Stephen, your abuse is sick. Your abuse
Watch it.
is sick.
Watch it. Fucking watch it.
I'm gonna let go. I'll get what you need me to get. And I need some space. We need to just stop.
No respect. You said, then we're at...
So there's much more to this video out there. it kind of goes on for there's another version of this video that has more time to it, and it's basically him and his wife arguing. And what's going on is that he is not letting her take the car out. It's a video about him essentially just berating his wife. What it was is that he wanted her to run some errands, and he didn't want her to take the car that they have, which apparently they're like fucking super rich, but they only have one car. You know, like, I don't know what the fuck is up with that. Like, you're like a multi-millionaire and you've only got one car. Like, buy another car. And, you know, that actually kind of sounds to me like another sort of form of control. Like, because if he's only has one car, then his wife can't go anywhere. That's what it sort of sounds like to me, right? Like, it's a way of keeping her, like, you know, keeping her under lock and key so that he can control her movements. Because there's no excuse for that, dude. If you like, Crowder has like literally millions and millions of dollars. I mean, we all saw the deal that they were going to give him with the Daily Wire, where they were offering him like $50 million, right? So obviously the motherfucker can afford another car. So why doesn't he have another goddamn car? It's like, well, because he doesn't want his wife taking the car without his permission. He doesn't want his wife to be able to go places without asking him. That's what it sounds like to me, right? And anyway, in the video, basically she's crying. She's crying saying, you know, because he wants her to get an Uber, right? And go run a bunch of errands for him. And it's like, and she's like super pregnant while he sits there on his ass, smokes a cigar, and doesn't do shit. And he's like, no, don't take the car. It's like, well, if you want your wife to go do stuff, dude, then give her a mode of transportation. But basically, in the video, his wife is like crying and shit. And you can kind of tell, like, there's some emotional abuse going on there. Because people don't cry like the way she was crying over normal, like, arguments, right? And then he gets with the watch it thing at the end there. Watch it, right? And apparently after the video, after he says watch it and after it cuts out, he screams at her and says, I will fuck you up. Apparently that's like the part of the video that we're not seeing, right? So, yeah, like screams, you know, I will fuck you up kind of thing. So, kind of seems like, you know, if not physical abuse, kind of seems like there definitely is some emotional abuse going on here. So there was a statement that his wife put out basically saying that she's with her family and stuff like that. And they mention Steven Crowder going and having an elective surgery some time ago, which if you remember, he went and he had this whole thing where he said that his heart, like he went and got surgery and said it was like a heart problem. And kind of turns out that's not what it was about. Turns out that it was an elective surgery because he had a sunken chest. So he went and got this surgery like right around the time that she gave birth or whatever. And did it on purpose. So even when his latest children were born, like he wasn't there for the birth. Like, I don't know. There's all kinds of just drama and shit like that. And it's hilarious. It's hilarious and sad, and yeah, kind of makes me not very supportive of Steven Crowder there. I don't know. Through the whole thing, the guy sounds like a fucking, kind of sounds like a child. That's what it is. That's what it is. It's like the guy, he lied. He basically lied about his divorce thing. Right, because he was afraid that this shit was going to get out. He was afraid that it was going to get out that he was an emotionally abusive fucking scumbag, right? And exactly what was going on here was what was going to happen, and he tried to blame his kids on it. And it's just sort of like, I don't wish anybody bad when it comes to their marriages, right? That's between her and him, but. Yeah, man, he's the one that kind of aired this dirty laundry in the first place. It really kind of seems to me that he was trying to monetize it, Like, he knew it was going to get out, right? And normally you could, because what would you think? Like, what would you do if you were him? If you were a famous person, if you had a platform, and you knew bad news was going to come out about you, what would you do, right? I tell you what I would do. I would have came on the air and said, yeah, hi, I'm getting divorced. You're going to see some shit in the news, and I don't want to talk about it. Bam, the end. Right? That's what would have been. And it said, yeah, I'll talk about it as shit happens. Maybe I'll talk about it. But I wouldn't say anything about it. It would just be private. If you really wanted it to be private, then it just would have been private, right? So why did he make such a big goddamn deal over it? Well, it really, the only reason you would do that if you knew really damaging stuff was going to come out. Stuff that would make you look really horrible. Right? Stuff that you knew was not going to paint you in the best light. And especially, why would you involve Candace Owen? Like, why would you involve, like, somebody completely fucking different that has nothing to do with anything? Like, what the fuck does Candace Owens have to do with any of this shit, right? Apparently, Candace Owens has invited his wife onto her show to give her side of the story. Nobody would have said shit if you just would have kept it quiet. I don't understand, and it really seems like one of two things. Either he knows that there's some really bad stuff out there that's going to come out about his relationship with his wife, right? Like, really bad stuff that's going to make him look like a monster, and so he's trying to get ahead of that. Or he's trying to monetize it. I mean, it could be one of those two things. Like, and I wouldn't put it past him to try to monetize it either. If you remember, like we said, the thing with him getting surgery with the sunken chest thing, he tried to monetize that shit too. He was getting an elective surgery. He lied and said it wasn't an elective surgery, but that's what it was. It was gender affirming care. He had a sunken chest, and he wants his chest to stick out more so that he can, like, pretend to be big and tough or whatever. So it was an elective surgery that he didn't need for survival. And then one of his lungs collapsed, because anytime you go and get surgery, there's a potential for things to go wrong. So something went wrong. He had a problem with one of his lungs there, and they had to, like, keep him in the hospital, and it got serious and stuff, right? And he completely monetized it. He got viewers tuning in for that. So was he trying to do that with his divorce here? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Or maybe, I don't know, the other alternative I see is that the guy's just a huge, giant, narcissistic man-child, right? Who doesn't give a fuck about anybody but himself. And, is attempting to drag his wife's name through the mud because she's dumping him, because she's sick of his fucking shit. I mean, I would say, if there's anything, I would say that's probably it. That's what it sounds like to me, right? So, I don't know. Folks, it's great to see these assholes. Like, don't get me wrong. What's the German word for when you're happy at the misery of your enemies? Schadenfreude, right? It's great to get a little bit of Schadenfreude when you see these morons fucking, like, eat themselves. I'm not gonna lie. I'm enjoying it. Does that make me a bad person? Yeah, maybe. But Steven Crowder himself is a very bad person. And how many people out there has he misled with his hatred and lies over the years? How many people on a daily basis, right, does he mislead with his hatred and lies? How many young kids out there have listened to his ass? When I say young kids, I mean people in high school, people in college. How many of them have tuned into his show and listened to him spout some racist shit and just, reinforced any sort of, like, pre-existing proclivities they may have had when it comes to racism, right? How many times has that happened? How much hate and fear has he spread about immigrants, about black people, about gay and trans people out there, right? You could sit here and be like, okay, well, nobody deserves to have all of their personal life dragged out into the light like this. And his family deserves privacy, blah, 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 blah. Kind of sounds like he brought this shit on himself. Kind of sounds like he was trying to make money off of his divorce, to make, to demonize his wife there, right? To make money from his situation. Kind of sounds like that. And now the shit's not going the way that he expected it to go. I don't know. Kind of hard to feel sad for somebody in that situation, right? More like fuck Steven Crowder is my answer. So I don't know. I fuck him. Normally I wouldn't give a shit about stuff like this, but it's funny. It's funny, and I'm glad it happened. I don't give a shit. I don't know Steven Crowder. I'm glad the motherfucker's suffering. Why? Because he's a giant fucking asshole. That's why. Hello folks, if you like what I do and you want to support the channel, please consider buying something from my Etsy shop, supporting me on Patreon, liking and subscribing, and checking me out across my social media links listed below. Thank you all so much, and see you next time.